Hey guys, how are you all doing? Today's video is titled, Enough with the Flattery in Battlefield. And by that, I don't mean the game is completely bad. No, what I mean is that the game didn't bring anything revolutionary. All it really did was go back to Battlefield 3 with a few additions that didn't make much of a difference to the gameplay. After playing more than 20 hours of Battlefield, I decided to talk about the negatives I noticed in the game.
Before we start the video, please give us a like and subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments.
Let's start first with the overall gameplay system and the changes that have been made to it. The return of the class system is a really great thing, and I was actually one of the people who wanted it to come back to the series. But what happened here is that the company created an imbalance between each class. For example, now you have one class that's extremely overpowered, and most players use it because it gives them all the energy and more excitement than the other classes. On top of that, the Recon class was given the ability to carry a rocket launcher, which also made it one of the strongest classes, while the support and engineer classes were neglected, and it's very rare for anyone to play as them. Additionally, they opened up the weapon carrying system so that you can use any weapon you want with any class. There's no longer a specific weapon assigned to each class. This will create a lot of randomness in class selection, and it will make the gameplay much less cooperative, because everyone will just play in the way they enjoy most. They won't be serving the team as much. The second point is shooting mechanics and weapon balance, and this is a point of contention among players. But in my opinion, I feel like the weapons now are more like laser guns. They have almost no recoil and don't feel heavy in gameplay. I mean, when I try the weapon without any attachments, it actually feels more realistic. For example, the KTS-100's recoil is almost non-existent. Not to mention the weapon damage drops off with distance. Even if the distance isn't that great, the weapon's damage becomes so weak it's like you're shooting with a plastic gun. Another problem I faced is that I can't tell the difference between my teammates and the enemies. Several times someone came at me and I shot at them only to find out they were a friend. Honestly, the character models are so repetitive that it's really confusing to distinguish between allies and enemies. There were also some visual glitches in the game, like the lighting, and in some areas the colors were so bright that they were harsh on the eyes. The sniper effect was exaggerated to an annoying and completely unrealistic degree. And besides dying quickly, when you try to kill someone, it feels like you empty an entire magazine into them, and they still don't die. All of these were also major issues with the gameplay system. Now let's talk about the vehicles. The vehicles here felt very light on the ground. It was like they were sliding or gliding, and they were affected by even the smallest obstacles. Not to mention they were extremely weak and couldn't take much damage. As for the planes and helicopters, their controls were extremely difficult because of the exaggerated inertia. Controlling them was so discouraging that it almost made you not want to play with aircraft at all. The second thing we have today is the maps and environmental design. Let's start first with the building destruction system. However, behind this excessive destruction, there are many downsides. First of all, the fact that a single shell can bring down an entire building is completely unrealistic. Besides the lack of realism, destroying a building with just one rocket shell greatly weakens tactical gameplay, especially in defensive areas. Moreover, when an entire building is wiped off the map, it makes the map much more chaotic. For example, if we look back at Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 2, we'll see that destruction would break off part of a building, then another part, and then another until the whole building eventually collapsed. But here, the entire building comes down with a single shell. This has had a big impact on tactical gameplay. Not to mention, the collapse of an entire building can affect performance on some devices. It causes the frame rate to drop because of the heavy animation involved when the building collapses. So I hope they fix it and make the collapse happen gradually, not all at once. Now, let's talk about the maps. The maps are extremely tight, which makes things really crowded. Plus, there are negative, unused areas in the game, or in other words, areas that are there for no reason. And that made the combat zones, more numerous. But the thing is, the game now has a lot of repetition in the combat areas. The game no longer has much of a tactical aspect. Literally, as soon as you take a couple of steps, you run into an enemy. Not to mention, I personally have been killed from behind more than 600 times. And the issue of having small maps and putting heavy vehicles in them is really annoying. It feels like the vehicle literally takes up a huge portion of the map. Plus, some maps give one team a clear advantage over the other. The problem with the previous Battlefield game was that the maps were way too big, with lots of empty areas. And now, because the maps are smaller, combat areas keep repeating, which has made things a bit boring. Now, let's move on to the third point, technical issues. One of the things DICE announced was the Javelin system, which is supposed to be a very high-level anti-cheat system. Apparently, it requires a security boot from the BIOS. But what actually happened was the complete opposite. A huge number of cheaters appeared just a few hours after the beta was released. Yes, the company said they warned all those cheaters, but that's really worrying. This is just the beta version and it got hacked so quickly, so imagine what could happen with the full release. And the second thing that I personally really hated was the servers. You might end up waiting for half an hour just to get your turn among 250,000 players in the queue. Not to mention some technical issues in the game. On certain devices, it suffered from extremely high CPU usage at the expense of the graphics card. And some PlayStation 5 players are experiencing frame drops down to 40 frames per second, even in performance mode. And that was my personal opinion. I know a lot of people are going to criticize me for it. If you agree with my opinion, please let me know in the comments. And if you disagree, let me know as well. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.